Hello, my name is Milo Carter, and my idea for this project was to recreate the Venus de Milo sculpture in Procreate with the missing arms intact. Throughout this video, I'm going to talk about my art process and provide some facts about the statue. So let's dive in. I started out by blocking out the base forms of the pose and then sketching them onto the larger area. For the arms, I looked up different Greek statues to get an idea of how they would have posed them. I ended up going through a couple of different poses throughout this video until I finally settled on one I like and thought made sense on how the shoulders were positioned. Now with the rough sketch done, I moved on to a more detailed sketch, starting with the face. I struggled with the proportions of the face a bit, so you can see me fussing with it. I also used the Procreate pencil brush for this sketch. It lets me get a lot of those loose lines and feels more natural to draw with. And here you can see me going back to my rough sketch to change the arm poses. And then once I was satisfied with the arms, I continued with my detailed sketch. My lines get really rough and sketchy with the folds of the fabric once you start seeing me working on those. Fabric is very difficult to get right, and I kind of made my best estimate with how all of those folds work. You can also see me struggling with those feet there, and I kind of made some guesses where it was cut off at the bottom. And then once I had my more detailed sketch in, I started inking. I used a chalk brush to ink it in because it helped me get straighter, more precise lines, but it gives the line work a really nice texture. And I wanted to keep with a rougher feel for the lines, and you'll see that I do the same with the shading as well. And once I start working on the fabric, you can see those lines get a lot smoother. I adjusted the length of the fabric because I felt like the legs were a little too short. And then here I'm just making more little changes to the pose and the proportions of the sculpture. And then once the inking was done, it was time to color it in and shade it. I started off by blocking some values in, and like I said before, I used this really textured, chunky brush so that it had the feel of that rougher marble, and then I blended those values together with that same texture brush. Using the same brush to blend it in with really helps smooth it out without losing a lot of the texture, and then I followed that same process with the rest of the body as well. And while I work on the body, I want to talk more about this statue. This statue is often referred to as the Venus de Milo. It was built in 150 BCE by a sculptor named Alexandros. However, it wasn't until 1820 that it was discovered on the island of Milos. The statue was donated by King Louis XVIII to the Louvre in France soon after it was found. It was found in several different pieces and was reconstructed, but they never found the arms. It was also first thought to be a statue of the sea goddess Amphitrite, because that was the goddess that the island of Milos worshipped. However, it is now accepted to be a statue of Aphrodite instead. The statue follows a lot of elements of classicism, which is what we now call the style of ancient Greek statues and arts. The idealized beauty, the contrapposto pose, the half nudity, the draped linen are all examples of that classical style. Going back to the piece, you can see me smoothing out the shading on that fabric. I also end up removing the line on that knee that's kind of jutting out to make it more clear that that's shading and not part of the folds of the fabric. And you can see that I do that right there. And then I still am adjusting, fixing a lot of that shading. And then once I got to the arms, I kind of made up the shading for the arms and hands since I didn't have a reference to go off of. I'm not the best at lighting and shading, but I think it turned out all right. If I were to change anything, I would probably change the shading on the right arm. I just feel like it's a little too round and a little too smooth for what it would have been had the arm actually been there. And then once I was done with the arms, I started cleaning up around the sculpture, getting all of the pieces I missed. I even added a background color, as you can see, so I could see where I had colored out the lines, cleaned those up. And then I started messing around with the background until I was satisfied with it. And that is the finished piece. After I saved the video, I did go back and fix some of the shading around the neck. But overall, I'm happy with how this turned out, and I learned a lot about an iconic Greek statue. Thank you for listening to my presentation.